Awesome. So we'll go ahead and get started now. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our webinar, Taking Studio to the Next Level. My name is Courtney Mathy. I'm a Senior Customer Success Manager here at WellSaid, and I'm going to help facilitate today's session. First off, I want to introduce our speaker, Alisandra. She's another Customer Success Manager on our team. And Ali originally started with us on the sales team, but transitioned over to customer success because of her passion for working with our customers and developing those relationships. And both Ali and I are located in Seattle, Washington, pretty close by to our WellSaid Labs office. And I noticed quite a few of my customers RSVP'd, so thank you so much for joining. And we look forward to sharing some of our new features and new voices we've released.
Yeah, thank you, Courtney. I am thrilled to be here with all of you today. I have to admit that hosting a webinar has always been on my professional bucket list. When Marta, our manager, who a lot of you may be familiar with, asked us if any of us wanted to host a webinar, my hand shot up really fast.
Yeah, really looking forward to hearing you share all your tips and tricks with our audience today. And for any first-time attendees of a WellSaid Labs webinar, all of our previously hosted webinars can be found on our WellSaid Labs YouTube page. We usually host these once a quarter and typically focus on best practices for adjusting voiceover, tips and tricks, and new features.
Yeah, let's go ahead and take a look at the agenda for today. So we've done our introductions and Courtney will be going over a few housekeeping items. I will share kind of what inspired today's webinar. Then I will show you guys an example of a production that I made before we go ahead and jump into the studio and kind of deconstruct some of our tips and tricks. I'll sprinkle in some of the new features that we've added since the beginning of the year. And at the end, I'll go ahead and we will have some time to answer some of your guys' questions. Courtney, what are some of the housekeeping items that you wanted to share?
Yeah, a few quick things to note. If you haven't done so already, feel free to throw in your name and where you're dialing in from in the chat. Love to see everyone introduce themselves. As we go through this session, you can submit any questions in that Q&A box. Please try to use the Q&A box just because sometimes they can get a little bit buried in chat, and we want to make sure that we can address all of those at the very end of the session. We'll leave about 5 or 10 minutes at the end to go through all of those. And then lastly, we'll send out a recording of the session today to all registrants, usually just a day or two after the webinar. And before we dive in, Ali, can you share a little bit about the inspiration for today's session?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you first for those housekeeping notes. I'd also love seeing the interaction in the chat. I do have to give a shout out to all my customers that I manage. My inspiration was really them. Courtney, I think you can share the sentiment that, we appreciate any opportunity that we get to spend face to face with our new and existing customers. There's usually like a limited amount of time and so much information to go over. We do our best to cover all of the basics, but I feel like there's always things that we are trying to teach our customers.
Yeah, definitely. And same goes for other teams that interact with potential and current customers at WellSaid. Our sales team is always super helpful at demoing our product, and definitely want to shout out our customer support team, Jen and Marina. They manage our live chat and they write all of the articles for our Help Center.
Exactly. They're constantly writing new Help Center articles. That's actually, they both help me pinpoint the articles that I kind of wanted to focus on for the voiceover production. And they recently released an article called How to Get Your Voice Avatars Talking, a guide to dialogue creation was kind of the focus today.
Yeah, I was really excited to see this article released. It basically walks through some tips and tricks for having avatars communicate naturally between each other. I've realized how easy it is to take the same approach, and I know I've gotten really great feedback from my customers about this.
Yeah, I feel like I always see in the chat, like, can I use 2 avatars for production? And yeah, definitely. I know it's common to have just one, but Love being able to show you guys how to get some multiple voices in a production. So let's go ahead and listen to a short radio commercial about WellSaid Labs.
Are you tired of recording voiceovers for your workplace projects? Are you spending time and money on post-production and recording equipment? Well, fret no more. Introducing the top AI voice platform by WellSaid Labs. Let's eavesdrop on a conversation between two people carpooling to work.
Thanks for picking me up. I found something you're really going to love.
Oh, Hannah, what is it this time? The unicorn drink you had me try last time had way too much sugar.
It's not a new drink concoction, promise. This will make our work life so much easier. Here is a hint. You won't have to record in the closet again, or spend more money on the soundproof foam you keep buying for your walls.
Well, spill the beans already.
Come on, try and guess. I'll give you one more hint. No more frustration anytime you accidentally sneeze or a fire truck passes by in the middle of recording.
This does sound like something I will really like, and I never understood why I end up sneezing every time I record a voiceover. I end up having to do it all over again. What's it called?
It's called WellSaid Labs. They are a text-to-speech platform with realistic voices that will allow us to create and update content on demand.
Okay, I'm intrigued, but I've always found AI voices a bit robotic. How does it work?
I think it's a game changer. All you need to do is enter your script, pick your voice avatar, and it creates an audio file. The voices are so realistic. We should use one of their voices for an upcoming project and show it to the boss. I bet he won't be able to tell it's not a human.
Let's try it out when we get to work. I bet this will save me loads of time and hassle.
That was well said, if I do say so myself. Try WellSaid Labs today for your voiceover and content creation needs. It speaks for itself.
And that was an example of a radio commercial that was empowered by WellSaid Labs Voices. This was a script that was written by me to kind of show you a production with dialogue. So I ended up using 3 different voice avatars. Well, let's go ahead and just talk about how we can bring that to life with voice. So I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen, and we're going to jump into the studio. And if you haven't already, while I'm making this transition, checked out a past webinar, I know Courtney mentioned it before, is the studio best practices, where we kind of go over the basics of the studio, and I'll be highlighting some of those steps, but not going into as much detail because there's some other stuff that I wanted to focus on today. So here we are. Can everyone see my screen? Cool. So the first step in creating a new commercial is starting a new project. So I'm going to go ahead and hit this green button here, and I'm going to call this radio commercial. And the second line here is optional, but it helps you get a little bit more kind of granular with your organization. So you could put like a customer name or by state. But for this instance, I'm going to say it's for a specific department. Say this is going to be for our marketing team. Go ahead and hit create project. And right away, you'll notice our voice avatar library pop up. So something that I wanted to show you guys right off the bat is this new tag that is on the voice avatar library. So not only will you guys see these on brand new voices, but also on our existing voices that have new styles. So we recently launched a lot of new voices and new styles that we'll kind of touch on a little bit later, but something, very easy to see. For this project, I knew I was going to need 3 different voices. And for the audition process, we realized that when I first started a year ago, we had 44 voices, a handful of accents, and 3 styles. And now we have 66 voices with 9+ accents and 4 styles. Where we are continuing to expand, so we wanted to make the selection process easier. So if you look up here on the top, you'll see this new filter button. And this will pop up with all of the different voice attributes. It is separated by regional accents, voice characteristics, and performance styles. So we'd love to see some engagement in the chat. if you guys were creating your own radio commercial, out of these characteristics, what would you end up choosing? For this radio commercial, I knew that at the beginning, the announcer, I wanted something, kind of the promotion style I thought was going to be perfect, great for marketing and advertising. I wanted that voice to be, kind of upbeat. So I'm going to go ahead and choose upbeat here. And I'm going to go ahead and click apply. And I was able to dwindle down from 66 down to just these few in the screen here. So after looking at these voice avatars, on my own time, I was able to narrow it down to Lee, Hilda, and Paul. You can actually hit this little play button to preview which ones you like, but I like those three for the auditioning process. So something that is also new is you can actually add your favorite voice avatars, like your commonly used ones, down to the studio. And this is actually a tip for me. It's great for the auditioning process too, so you don't have to go back into the voice avatar library. So I'm going to add to favorites the ones that I'm going to audition. So Lee, Tilda, and Eric. Go ahead and come out of here. And I'm just going to take the first line from the script here and audition these three. I'm going to choose Eric and his promo. Then I'm going to choose Lee in promo. And let's go ahead and go Tilda. So I'm going to go ahead and play each of these. And after it's done, we'd love to see in the comments which one you guys like the best.
Are you tired of recording voiceovers for your workplace projects?
Are you tired of recording voiceovers for your workplace projects?
Are you tired of recording voiceovers for your workplace projects?
Yeah, so I see some people like Eric. I see a few for Tilda. For this production, I ended up choosing Lee. I thought he was just kind of the most clear and the booming. And when you're listening to the radio, that first 3 seconds is really important to kind of capture attention. So because I chose Lee, I showed you how to add favorites. It's just as easy to remove them after you're done auditioning. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the ones that I'm not going to use anymore and keep Lee for easy access. And before, you guys know, whenever you want to delete a new clip, you had to hit this little X button here. But we actually added a new feature where you can mass delete. So, one by one if you want, and the undo button will still pop up. But if you hit this, you can click all or just one by one. There's this actually new mass delete button that you guys can do because it's usually best practice to delete the clips that you're not going to use anymore after the auditioning process. And I'm going to delete these two because I didn't do the full script. So go ahead and delete, and that pop-up will still show up even when you mass delete, not just one by one. All right, so the next step of the process is to render the audition process for voice 2 and voice 3, but I do want to be mindful of time. So I'm not going to go to that full extent. I'm just going to kind of run through really quick what I was going for when I was going through the filters. So there's actually 2 ways you can get to the voice avatar library. It's clicking see all avatars, or you guys can actually click the little icon here at the top and it will pop up. Head back to filters. And for voice 2, I wanted to show you guys some of the diversity that we have added. So I'm going to go ahead and select all of our non-US voices. And for one of the voices, I wanted to show you a brand new one. And all of the brand new ones that we've released this quarter are in the narration style. So I'm going to go ahead and click narration. And some characteristics I liked were, I wanted someone that had a lively and inviting voice. I'm going to go ahead and click apply, and I was able to narrow it down even more. Love that. So for the voice 2, I ended up choosing Hannah, and I'm going to go ahead and add her to my favorites. And for the third voice, again, I wanted to show you a pre-existing voice avatar with a new style. I'm going to unclick narration and those characteristics. And I was going to go back to the promo to get that kind of exciting tone. And another voice characteristic I thought was important for a commercial was charismatic. I'm going to go ahead and click apply. And I was able to dwindle it down to one voice. So Diarmid, has actually won the role of voice 3. You know, I kind of act like a director when I'm choosing my voices. So I added him to my favorites. And if you could see here, it added all 3 of them, but it's just as easy to remove. When you actually go into render in this specific style, you'll see the drop down to the right of the picture, so you can choose which one you want. So we've finished the auditioning process and selecting the voices. So the next step is to render the audio for each of the scripts. I know I mentioned it before that there is a Help Center article called How to Get Your Voice Avatars Talking, a guide to dialogue. And it kind of highlights different approaches to creating a project with dialogue. So first, you can either take turns and render the voice, you know, in the order of the script. So I would go Lee first, then Hannah, then Diarmid. Or you can render each line for one voice avatar. So I would do all of Lee's first, then all of Hannah, then all of Diarmid. Or third, if you guys are on a team and want to work collaboratively, you can actually share the project and split up the work between 2 or more people. And you just do that by hitting the share button. And this is a functionality that's only available to teams. So you can share with everyone on your team or select specific people, giving them the right level of access, hit update, and now you can work on, you know, if Courtney and I wanted to work on this together, then we could. So those are the 3 different approaches. For this project, I decided to go with approach 2. I'm going to do go one by one for each voice avatar. And the reason I decided that is because if any edits that I make while doing voice 1, I can add to my pronunciation library and it will automatically be saved and remembered for the second and third. So I thought that was kind of a neat trick to, fast track some of the editing. So let's go ahead and choose Lee here. And I am going to get all of his script lines here and render his first line and the second one. While I am doing this, would love to hear from the audience in the chat if you have worked on any projects that involved, you know, more than one voice. I think it's really common to just have one, but do you guys like having multiple voices in one of your guys' like e-learnings or kind of newsletter updates? Would love to see some examples in the chat. All right. So I am all done rendering Lee's. He has 2 lines at the beginning and end. What I'm going to do is I'm going to play, and then I'm going to kind of show you some of the edits I would make to make it sound just, more enhanced.
Are you tired of recording voiceovers for your workplace projects? Are you spending time and money on post-production and recording equipment? Well, fret no more. Introducing the top AI voice platform by WellSaid Labs. Let's eavesdrop on a conversation between 2 colleagues carpooling to work.
All right. So I feel like you did a really good job getting it the first time, but there's just a few tweaks that I would want to make, and they're all pretty simple. So the first one I noticed is, well, fret no more. I kind of wanted to add a little bit of a pause there, so I'm going to add just a comma after well. Second is well said. Sometimes with compound words, they can kind of sound a little bit too fast together, and I wanted to sound just a little bit more clear. You know, I wanted to say clearly well said. And there's 2 things you can go about this. You can either add a hyphen or you can just add a space. And this is a great example of something you would want to add to your pronunciation library. And so that every time, so you don't have to go in and edit your script every time and add that space. So I'm going to go ahead and there's a shortcut here, but we actually have a full tab dedicated to it. So anytime the script says well said, I want it to be said this way. Add to library, and now it'll remember it for Hannah and Diarmid too. And then last but not least is carpooling. So he said it kind of like carpooling instead of carpooling. It's as easy as what I did with well said. You can add just a space for a compound word, or you can add a dash. And that's also something that you can add to the voice library as well. So those are the edits I want to make here. I'm going to hit create. And whenever you make updates, it's usually best practice again to just delete the old ones so you don't have both of them kind of lingering in your clips. And I'm going to go ahead and play the new edit.
Are you tired of recording voiceovers for your workplace projects? Are you spending time and money on post-production and recording equipment? Well, fret no more. Introducing the top AI voice platform by WellSaid Labs. Let's eavesdrop on a conversation between two colleagues carpooling to work.
So, really small changes, but I love the change in emphasis and, the diction that he added to those two words that we adjusted. So after you are done editing, and it's usually a great idea to figure out a good naming convention for your titles, once it's done. It automatically will go to their initials and the sequence of its order, so 3, 4, 5, 6. But I'm going to say this is voice 1. You could actually write out voice, but I know I'm going to do a short code. So V1, and this is his first line. So I'm going to go L1. So now he's all done with his first line. And let's go ahead and play the second one now.
That was well said, if I do say so myself. Try WellSaid Labs today for your voiceover and content creation needs. It speaks for itself.
So if you guys couldn't tell, there's a kind of play on words there. I was trying to be a little funny with that. But sometimes, the power of the pause when you're telling a joke. I want to add kind of a little bit of space between that was well said. That was well said. If I do say so myself, kind of that knee slapper moment when you're telling you have to play on words. So there's a few approaches you can take to adding some pauses using punctuation. So you could just use 1 comma. If that's not enough, you could try multiple commas and ellipses, or if you want even more, you could try multiple periods. So this is something that you can do to add some add that power of the pause. And then second, I think Lee said voiceover and content creation kind of spaced out. And I want it to sound just to kind of a little bit closer together to add the flow. So something you can do in this scenario, instead of it sounding so separated, is adding quotation marks around that phrase to add just a little bit more emphasis and clarity. So I'm going to go ahead and hit create. And let's listen to the updates.
That was well said, if I do say so myself. Try WellSaid Labs today for your voiceover and content creation needs. It speaks for itself.
I think that sounded, I loved that extra pause because of the joke. And then I do think that he had a much better flow with the voiceover and content creation needs section. So again, we are done at making edits to this. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that old one and then figure out this is still voice 1 and this is the second line. So good, still having a good habit with keeping those titles neat. And we are actually all done with the first voice. We are going to switch gears over to Hannah for the next voice. So while I am doing this, would love to see in the chat if any of these small changes that I made to Lee did you guys know these tricks already? Did you learn something new? I think Hannah has about 5 lines. She talks the most, but it's because she's talking about the flip lab. So I'm okay with that. Right. And within just a few seconds, we are all done rendering her script. So let's go ahead and listen to the first one and see what changes we might want to make.
Thanks for picking me up. I found something you're really going to love.
Oh, Allie, I think you're still on mute.
There we go. So for the first line, I wanted to have a little bit more focus on the love part. So I'm going to add those quotation marks that I showed you guys before, because I want her to sound like something you're really going to love. And second, grammar is not super important when you're working with scripts because of the power of punctuation within our studio. So sometimes they do a really good job of recognizing the difference between a period, an exclamation point, or a question mark. So in a radio commercial, I want her to sound even more excited. So a subtle change from a period to an exclamation point can actually make a really big difference. So I'm going to go ahead and make that update because I want her to have those exciting tones. So let's go ahead and hit create here. Give this a listen.
Thanks for picking me up. I found something you're really going to love.
I love that like kind of upward inflection at the end after we added those quotation marks. So I like these updates. So I'm going to go ahead and delete the old one here. And then after we're done making the edits, so this is voice 2 and this is her first line. All right, let's go ahead and listen to the second one.
It's not a new drink concoction, promise. This will make our work life easier. Here is a hint. You won't have to record in the closet again or spend more money on the soundproof foam you keep buying for your walls.
So as I showed you before with like the power of the pause, I want to add just a little bit more space. Sometimes the comma just isn't long enough. So I want her to sound like it's not a new drink concoction, promise. So I'm going to change this from multiple for a comma to just let's try an ellipses here with that promise. And then for the second one, I wanted to add a little bit more emphasis on keep because, it's kind of a pain for him to having to spend a bunch of money on the foam walls. In all honesty, I actually had to do that for my own house. I think we've bought so many from Amazon, and it's because I work with my partner in the same office, and we both talk really loud with our soundproof guys. So we're trying to make it sound just like kind of absorb some of the sound on that. So I definitely know what Dearman is going through. So I want emphasis on that keep. Has anyone else had to buy foam walls for their walls and too? So I'm going to add emphasis around keep. So, add a little bit of, so we know what the pain that he's going through. So, and then last but not least is if you ever want to change, alter the inflection of a word, the quotation marks help, but also apostrophe. So around walls, she said, buying for your walls. I want her to sound like buying for your walls. So I actually can add these around here and it will alter the inflection on certain words and phrases. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit create here. And let's give this new one a listen. Go on mute.
It's not a new drink concoction, promise. This will make our work life easier. Here is a hint. You won't have to record in the closet again or spend more money on the soundproof foam you keep buying for your walls.
Love the change in emphasis there. I'm going to go ahead and delete the old one here. And let's go ahead and give this one an update. And this is her second one. Go ahead and listen to number 3.
Come on, try and guess. I will give you one more hint. No more frustration anytime you accidentally sneeze or a fire truck passes by in the middle of recording.
Has anyone had that happen before where you're in the middle of a meeting and you could just hear a bunch of sirens in the background in the background of the noise? I get that a lot because I live in the city. So for this second line, I want to, the first one the first thing I'm going to make is, I showed you before, it's deleting the period and I want it to sound more exciting. So I'm just going to add a bunch of exclamation points all over the script. And then second is I'm going to actually just change some of the words. So sometimes you're creating something for like a professional setting and you want it to sound very proper. So I will. But this is a conversation between two friends, two colleagues. So I wanted to sound a little bit more relaxed. So I'm going to change it from I will to I'll. Sometimes it just kind of helps with the flow between a conversation between two people. So small changes to the script can also help as well. I'm going to go ahead and hit create. And look at that.
Come on, try and guess. I'll give you one more hint. No more frustration anytime you accidentally sneeze or a fire truck passes by in the middle of recording.
Awesome. So I like those subtle changes. So we're going to go ahead and say this one is ready to go. This is B2. This is her third line. And again, delete that old one. All right, we got 2 more to go with Hannah.
It's called WellSaid Labs. They are a text-to-speech platform with realistic voices that will allow us to create and update content on demand.
Well, I think this one sounded pretty good, so I don't have any changes to make. But one thing I do want to point out is the original script had it like this, but because I added it to the pronunciation library, it remembered it. So it's going to say it the way I preferred. So we are just going to go ahead and title this the way it is here. Sometimes it's just good to go the first time around. Right, 2, line 4. I'm going to go ahead and play that last one.
I think it's a game changer. All you need to do is enter your script, pick your voice avatar, and it creates an audio file. The voices are so realistic. We should use one of their voices for an upcoming project and show it to the boss. I bet he won't be able to tell it's not a human.
So a few things that I noticed right off the back is I want to add a little bit more emphasis and drama to game changer. Like, I think it's a game changer. So again, using that trick with the quotation marks and adding on around game changer. And then one word that she kind of struggled with was avatar. And we have a few tips to get it to say the way you want. And the first one is going to be phonetic spelling, where you're just kind of breaking it down using dashes to break up the syllables. And if you need to go even a little bit further than that, we actually have a tool called respelling. You guys didn't know about it. It's where you can give the voice avatar specific cues on how you want something to be pronounced. And the way you get to it is through the resources tab over here on the left, scrolling down to the bottom right-hand corner where you're going to see the help center. And this is where you'll see a guide to respellings. So everything right here that we're scrolling past is just a recap of what I'm showing you guys right now if you ever need a refresher. But what we want to see is this reference chart. It's broken down by vowels, consonants, vowel combos, and then scroll down a little bit more is each letter. So she said avatar incorrectly, and I want to change the way it's pronounced. So let's break it down. So I hear avatar. For a, I hear a, similar to the a in and, so a, and then v. So looking down at the consonant, so I would just type AV. So this section is where you'll see what you would want to type in the studio. Then avatar, so that second one is So we're going to look for the U and up, and we're going to type UH. And then that last one is tar, similar to just the word. So we're going to look for T. And then AR is going to see here down here in the vowel combos, similar to car. So we're going to type CAR, like the word. So I know it's kind of like a lot of back and forth, but once you play around with the respellings a few times, it's really easy to navigate. I'm going to take everything back over to the studio and show you how I broke that down. So anytime you're going to tell the studio that you want to start a respellings, you need to start and end with 2 semicolons. So we're going to go AV, and you always use a dash to separate syllables. Then up, then tar. And one thing I want to highlight with respellings, it's really important to remember to always capitalize at least one section for consistency. And like the English language, there's usually, with multiple syllables, there's usually one part that has kind of like the extra emphasis. The example I used in my onboarding calls is like because the cut sounds really crisp. And in Avatar, I kind of want that ending syllable. So I'm going to come over here and capitalize tar. And what's really great is I can copy paste this over here. So there's a shortcut that I showed you earlier. Anytime the script says avatar, I want it to be said like this. I'm gonna add that to the library. So always check out the respellings if you're struggling with kind of more difficult words like medical terms, people's names, company names. The second thing that I wanted to adjust is putting a little bit more emphasis on the realistic. And sometimes what you can do is add actually a comma before the last word. So I wanted to say the voices are so realistic, a little bit more focused on the realistic part, adding some drama to my radio commercial. And then extra emphasis on the we, we with the excitement. So I'm going to do that trick that I showed you before. So I'm going to add these quotation marks around we. And let's go ahead and create. I'd love to take a moment. I know I've been going over a lot, but would love to see engagement in the chat to see what is your favorite new voice or new style of an existing voice avatar, if anyone has been able to play around with them. I know we added some new Australia voices, some new UK. Has anyone been able to use one for a project?
I know I personally used Oliver, one of our new UK voices, and I think he's one of my new favorites.
All right, let's go ahead and listen to this update here.
I think it's a game changer. All you need to do is enter your script, pick your voice avatar, and it creates an audio file. The voices are so realistic. We should use one of their voices for an upcoming project and show it to the boss. I bet he won't be able to tell it's not a human.
So love the new changes. It was really simple to be able to make those adjustments with focus on and game changer, saying avatar correctly. She kind of said like a we, like an exciting with that change with the addition of the quotation marks. So I'm going to say this one is good to go. So view voice 2, line 5. I'm going to delete that old one here. And I'm going to drag this other one here. So we're actually all done with Hannah. Last but not least is going to be Dermot. His voices or his lines are a little bit shorter, so this one will go by a lot quicker. But I'm hoping I am showing you guys some new tips and tricks. In the radio commercial, I don't know, I'm a sucker for accents. I mean, I don't know if you guys watch some shows, but I feel like I always pay a little bit more attention when there's an accent. So I thought it was fun to add him to the production. I just realized now that I was not hitting create. And just so you guys know, if I'm messing up a little, I hope I'm playing it off really well because this is my first time hosting a webinar. I hope I'm doing a good job. All right, we have 2 more lines to go here. And last but not least, we are all good to go with start off with Dearman's first line.
Oh, Hannah, what is it this time? The unicorn drink you had me try last time had way too much sugar.
I love the accent. The only thing that I would adjust with this one is to kind of add some drama to the way. So I'm going to go ahead and add those quotation marks around the word. And you can, like I said before, you could try apostrophes too to change the inflection. And something that I want to pinpoint is that every time you create, you hit the create button, it's actually a unique prediction on the way it's pronounced. So if you rendered this 5 times the same script, you might notice the subtle difference without adding any punctuation. So something I always like to remind our customers. So let's go ahead and just add that way focus.
Oh, Hannah, what is it this time? The unicorn drink you had me try last time had way too much sugar.
So love that emphasis on the way. So I'm going to go ahead and say this one's good to go. He determined his voice 3, and this is his first line. I'm actually curious, did anyone ever try, I mean, not to call out any names out here, but does anyone remember when that unicorn drink came out at Starbucks? I thought it had way too much sugar too.
Well, spill the beans already.
And the only adjustment I would make here is just adding a quick comma after well to, well, spill the beans already. He's just like, oh, come on. Go ahead and hit create, the power of some spacing and pausing.
Well, spill the beans already.
Like that. So we're just going to say this is good to go. Voice 3, line 2. And going to go ahead and delete that old one. Let's listen to his next line.
This does sound like something I will really like, and I never understood why I end up sneezing every time I record a voiceover. I end up having to do it all over again. What is it called?
So the first thing I want to do is with this does sound like something I really, really like. So adding that emphasis, I'm going to go ahead and add those apostrophes or those quotation marks to change the adjusting inflection, to kind of add some manipulation there. And I want to add some emphasis to all over again, to add like the all over again, add some emphasis there. And third, again, I mentioned before that this is a conversation between two friends. You don't have to be so formal with the script. So sometimes you want to make adjustments to help with the flow. So I'm going to go from what is to what's. What's it called? When you're telling your friend, you're like, what is up? I would say, what's up instead. So I want to make that change to make it just a little bit more personal. And last but not least is I wanted to add some focus on questions. Sometimes if it doesn't get it correct or like the way you want for the inflection, there's actually a few things you can do to kind of help make a question sound a little bit more natural. So you can actually try leaving it as it is and hitting create again, seeing if that makes a difference. Or you can add a comma before the last word. You can add quotation marks around the whole last word or the entire question. Or you can also add quotation marks around just the question mark. And these are a few tips and tricks that you can do to manipulate a question to help with that inflection change if it, sounds a little bit more like a statement the first time around. So be sure to try out those anytime you're trying to work on a question. I think you did a good job, but I'm just going to go ahead and add the emphasis on the question mark for this example.
This does sound like something I will really like, and I never understood why I end up sneezing every time I record a voiceover. I end up having to do it all over again. What's it called?
All right, I'm going to say that one's good to go. I like those changes. This is his third line here. I'm going to go ahead and let's play the next one.
Okay, I'm intrigued, but I've always found AI voices a bit robotic. How does it work?
So I think just like Hannah, there are going to be cases where it just sounds exactly how I want. I think he did a really great job saying this line. So I'm going to say this one is good to go too. All right, and this is voice 3, line 4. And last line.
Let's try it out when we get to work. I bet this will save me a bunch of time and hassle.
And for this last line, the only thing I would do is I showed you before, I want to add more excitement. So I'm going to change it from a period to an exclamation point. And I want to add some emphasis, some drama to bunch. So I'm going to add those quotation marks. I keep hitting the 0. All right, hit create. And let's go ahead and delete that old one. And listen to the new one.
Let's try it out when we get to work. I bet this will save me a bunch of time and hassle.
You see that added extra emphasis to bunch. I really like that. So let's go ahead and say this one's good too. Voice 3, line 5. And I'm going to drag this one right. Okay, so we have gotten to a point where we've made all of the edits. The next thing that we need to do is to drag them, make sure you have a good title for all of them so it's easy to navigate. The next thing we want to do is rearrange them in the order of the script because I went one by one. And the titling convention actually is going to make this really easy. You just hit these 6 dots to the left and you just drag them in the right order. So Lee goes first and he's actually going to be the ending too. And if you guys did not know, you want to combine from bottom to top. So the beginning is going to be on the bottom and the ending goes on top. So now we're just going to go, Hannah goes first. So we're going to go 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, and then 5, 5. And now that we have it all arranged in the right order, the next thing we want to do is to combine. So there's actually 2 approaches we can take to combine. You can combine all of them, or you can combine in sections. If you guys didn't know, when you combine clips, you can actually there's another way to add pausing between clips. So for this example, I am going to select all of them, but I'm going to take off the beginning and end. I'm just going to do the radio commercial because if you hit this combine button, let's say this is the middle section, there's a drop down here that lets you choose small, natural, or long. I'm going to choose natural just because of the conversation. But when I combine with Lee, I'm going to choose long because having that extra space gives you to add time to add like maybe in like a voice, a third party to add some like sound effects or some music like I did for my commercial. So let's go ahead and choose natural for the conversation. And what's if you guys didn't already know is a few months ago we actually increased the character limit from 1,000 to 5,000, and we actually have a new combined limit from 10 megabytes to 70 megabytes. So you can actually combine up to an hour depending on the voice avatar built into the studio. So I'm going to go ahead and drag Lee's ending and Lee's beginning around the radio commercial. Select those 3 again, beginning at the bottom. Combine, and I'm going to say this is the final copy. And I'm going to choose long, so we can add some extra spacing there. And voila, that is how I got to my radio commercial. And something, when you're done, you would hit this download button. Something that's new, if you guys remember in my editing, I actually made some changes to the script. Because sometimes you want to change the words just to help with the flow. The new feature we added is being able to download a text file of the script along with the audio file. So it's just easy to kind of copy paste the edits you made back into like a master document that you guys may have. So I'm going to go ahead and hit this, download the final product, and I hope you guys were able to learn something new with this. I'm going to go ahead and go back to sharing my production here, or the PowerPoint. And this is where I'm kind of go into detail over the studio updates and the new voices that I talked to you guys about before. So this is actually a quote directly from our new VP of product, Taisha Snow, who started with us at the beginning of this year. And this is just her telling us about how she was able to hit the ground running with all the feedback we have received from our customers. Our roadmap is truly customer centric. So if you guys don't already, email us, talk to your customer success managers, let us know what you want to see because you guys are shaping how we are creating the studio. So I was able to show you guys the new filter, the voice avatar library, showed you how to favorite your frequently used avatars. We added a new feature where you can actually search projects by name, not just sort. You now have the functionality to move and copy clips into another project. You can expand the text box that I showed you before by kind of hovering over that line under the create button and dragging down. We've increased our character limit from 1,000 to 5,000 and our combine limit. You can download the script with an audio file. We have a new value calculator and a tutorial page for our new users. And then the voice avatar updates that I mentioned to you guys before, just this quarter, we have been able to release 14 brand new voices for our customers and 19 voice avatars with expanded styles. So, and these are just it broken down by like regions and by numbers. So be sure to check that out. And over here on the right, you'll see a quote from Sarah Fairweather, our community program manager. She manages the relationships between the voice actors and WellSaid Labs, and she loves seeing requests for voices from specific regions, and then us being able to deliver those for you guys when we add them to the voice avatar library. So if you have any suggestions there too, would love to hear it. And that is all I have for you today, Courtney. Let's go ahead and jump into the Q&A.
Awesome. Thank you, Allie. That was super helpful. I know I love seeing how team members kind of have a different process and all the tips and tricks and ways to explain those adjustments. So I definitely learned a lot that I'll be implementing and with my clients as well. In our last couple minutes, we had a couple questions come into the Q&A. Most of these were answered throughout your presentation. I know we had a couple folks asking about how to get a consistent pronunciation across avatars, and each time that was with the respelling feature that will allow you to get that same pronunciation. Also touched on what's coming down the pipeline. So as far as speed and volume controls, those are slated to be released later this year, and we'll keep the team updated as soon as we have kind of more of a final date. And then a couple kind of last questions. Allie, what is your favorite out of the new voice avatars we just released?
I have to say Lorenzo. He is a brand new a voice in with a Mexico regional accent. When I first played it, it just kind of hit home for me. Part of my lineage is from Mexico, so it just you know, I have a lot of family members that are trying to learn English and have that accent when they're speaking, so it really hit home.
Great. And on a similar note, which of the product updates have you found to be most impactful, either in your workflow or with your clients?
I definitely have to say the new filters button for the voice avatar library. We are going to continue. We're going to get to a point where we have over 70 voices in the future. And, you know, you guys saw during my audition process, being able to dwindle it down from 66 to 14 to 1 to 10. It just makes it really easy to figure out what voice I want to use.
And we had a couple folks ask about creating a custom voice avatar. Can you kind of give us a high-level summary of our offerings and how they would reach out to someone to start that process?
Yeah, if you guys haven't already, we were featured on Planet Money NPR, where we actually created a custom voice for one of their employees for the radio. And our sales team is going to be the best contact for that for more information. There's some time and logistics involved. I mean, WellSaid Labs is an AI for good. So we just want to make sure, hear a little bit more about your use case and if it's going to be a good fit. But our sales team is going to be the best point of contact to start that conversation, or your customer success manager if you guys are current customers.
Yeah, that's great. I know we had a couple folks asking about non-English language offerings. We don't have a specific release date just yet, but just note it's something that we're actively working on.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like, we're getting close to releasing some more details about that, sooner rather than later, but we are excited to kind of expand that territory pretty soon here.
Absolutely. And I think that was all of the questions we have so far. If anything comes through after the webinar, we'll be sure to reach out to you directly and address that. And again, we'll send out a recording in a few days after the webinar, and feel free to reach out to either myself, Allie, your customer success manager, or sales with any follow-up questions.
Thank you, everybody, so much. That was really fun, and I hope I get to do this again. And thanks so much for everyone for attending. Loved seeing all of the engagement, and hope to talk about this with my customers after.
Thank you so much, Allie, and thank you everyone who joined.
Bye, everyone.